How in the world do you get a bunch of 9 and 10-year-olds to suddenly start thinking like cutthroat entrepreneurs? And maybe more importantly, how do you manage to do it using just a 3-day math simulation? Well, welcome to This Explainer. Today we are going to break down an incredibly clever curriculum tool called the Food Truck. It's entirely designed to transform your standard, run-of-the-mill math lesson into a high-stakes, real-world business challenge.
There is this great motto from the Patience Framework, which actually built this simulation, and it goes like this: they'll forget their learning, but never stop thinking. For just $19, teachers can grab this 3-day mission that essentially forces students to run a festival food truck. It seamlessly disguises multi-step word problems, multiplication, and money math as life-or-death business decisions. And honestly, they really do forget they're doing math because they get so laser-focused on running their festival stand.
All right, let's jump right into how this actually works. The entire simulation revolves around a really simple 3-step loop. Step 1, you have to compute the profit using multi-step math. Step 2, they must make a judgment call based strictly on those numbers. They have to entirely ignore their gut feelings. And step 3, they actually have to defend that call. Every single decision they make over this 3-day festival requires real, concrete judgment grounded in evidence.
So kicking things off with day 1, the menu. The students have to feature exactly 2 items.
Our young tycoons are officially open for business, and they are immediately handed their raw data. They have tacos, smoothies, and burgers. For each item, they get the selling price, the cost to make the item, and the total number sold. Tacos sell 100 units, smoothies sell 120, and burgers sell 80. Now the students need to figure out which 2 items they're going to keep on the menu.
Now, I want you to really think about this for a second. Going purely off your gut instinct, which item would you cut? Human nature, and definitely 4th grade human nature, tells us that smoothies are the obvious winner here, right? After all, they sell the absolute most at 120 units. So logically, you'd probably want to cut the burgers since they only sell 80. But remember our framework. You have to compute the profit.
And here is exactly where the students fall right into a trap. If they sit down and do the math, they find out that smoothies sell for $6, but they cost $4 to make. That is a razor-thin profit margin of just $2 per smoothie. Multiply that $2 by the 120 units sold, and the total profit is only $240.
But wait, let's contrast this with the burgers. Burgers sell for $7 and cost $3 to make, which leaves a really hefty $4 profit margin. Multiply that $4 by the supposedly unpopular 80 units sold, and you get a massive $320 in profit. Suddenly, the absolute worst-selling item becomes your undisputed financial champion.
So what we're really looking at here is popularity versus profit. This is the entire core lesson of day 1. The bestseller is absolutely not always the most profitable. The students are explicitly rewarded for choosing based on profit per item rather than just looking at how many units they sold. It completely forces them to let the math, not the crowd, dictate what goes on their menu.
Moving right along to day 2, the spot. They have to choose where to park. Now that their menu is totally sorted out, they have to decide where to park this thing, knowing every single meal sells for exactly $8. They've got 3 choices: Lakeview, Food Alley, and the Front Plaza. We can clearly see the Front Plaza is the busiest spot by far, pulling in 130 customers. But the costs to park there are a really steep $850.
So I'll throw this back to you. Which is the best spot? And why shouldn't they just go straight for the biggest crowd? Once again, the simulation is practically begging the students to chase that popularity metric. I mean, 130 customers at $8 a pop means the Front Plaza is bringing in over $1,000 in revenue. But as we're learning, revenue isn't profit.
When the kids actually sit down and crunch the numbers, a completely different reality hits them. The Front Plaza, despite its massive crowd, only yields $190 in profit because of those crushing $850 overhead costs. Lakeview brings in $180, but Food Alley, with only 95 customers but a very low $400 cost, it completely crushes the competition, leaving a clean $360 in pure profit.
It's a brilliant way to drive home the lesson for day 2. The busiest crowd does not automatically equate to the most success if your overhead is eating you alive. Once again, the cold hard math brutally beats the gut feeling. Food Alley is the undisputed winner simply because of its low costs.
All right, we've made it to day 3, the big weekend. And there's a mid-festival cost hike.
Our 4th graders are probably feeling pretty confident right about now. But you know, business is never that easy. The simulation throws a brutal curveball right at them. The festival organizers announce a mid-weekend change. Starting on the second day of the festival, they are raising every single spot fee by $90 a day. Everything the students just painstakingly calculated for Food Alley has fundamentally changed, and they are forced into a total recomputation.
So they're hit with the ultimate choice. Do they stubbornly stay at Food Alley, their big day one winner, or do they pack up the truck and move to a totally new, cheaper location called the Riverside Lot, which guarantees a steady, unhiked profit of $310 a day?
Let's see how those 3-day totals actually shake out. If they just stay at Food Alley, they make $360 on day 1, but then that fee hike drops them to just $270 for days 2 and 3, which totals $900. But what if they move to the Riverside Lot for all 3 days? A steady $310 times 3 days yields $930. Moving to the cheaper spot actually wins the weekend.
The vital takeaway for the students here is crystal clear. Never assume yesterday's best choice is still today's best choice. The simulation is actively rewarding students for being flexible, for taking the time to recompute the new reality instead of just assuming their previous winner would hold on to the crown. It's seriously an incredible lesson in critical thinking.
Okay, let's talk about assessment and scaffolding. How do we evaluate all this reasoning? Now, you might be sitting there thinking, wow, that is a whole lot of complex reasoning for a 10-year-old. And you'd be right. To prevent struggling learners from being totally left in the dust, the curriculum provides these great scaffolded student pages. For learners who need a bit more support, the worksheets actually start the multiplication for them and provide structured sentence frames to help them articulate their reasoning. The genius here is that the cognitive load of doing the basic arithmetic is slightly lifted, which keeps the student's primary focus firmly planted on making that critical business judgment. And when it's time for grading, the teacher isn't just hunting for one magical correct answer. Using a 3-point rubric, students are evaluated on correctly performing the multi-step math, sure, but equally important is whether they prioritize profit over popularity, whether they actually noticed and recomputed after that fee hike, and most crucially, how well they defend their call using their numbers. It's truly evaluating evidence-based judgment.
Which brings us to my favorite part of the whole lesson, the capstone reflection. Students are asked this exact question. Give one example where the math made you pick something you wouldn't have guessed. This completely forces them to look back the past 3 days and articulate the exact moment they realized their gut instinct was dead wrong and the math was right.
It is just such an incredibly powerful way to wrap up a math unit. By transforming a boring worksheet into a high-stakes food truck, students learn firsthand that data tells a story that our instincts often miss completely. So I'll leave you with this to reflect on. In your own life, how often are you trusting the crowd instead of the numbers? How will computing the real profit, however you define it, drive your next big choice?